I know there's some of you wondering, well, who is this guy and what's his connection to Willie? And all you need to know is that I'm a fan, like all of you. I was class of '76 at Summit High. Willie was '74. So I was in the band. Got to see all of Willie's games, senior year. And I just wanted this event to be a celebration of sports, celebration of community, not just Summit, but New Providence and Chatham and Madison. I know we have folks from all over here. We've been blessed to have some fantastic athletes over the years. One of them is here, Johnny Mallory. Johnny, you want to stand up? Johnny? Johnny is one of just 3 to have their uniform retired at Summit High. Johnny was number 22. He's the only Summit player to ever make the NFL. Johnny played 4 years in the NFL. Johnny, you scored 4 touchdowns. I don't know if you still remember that. And actually, I talked to Johnny on the phone the other day, and he said that I was trying to figure out, you had a 58-yard touchdown reception, yet you were a defensive back. So we're going to talk about that later. But others in the area, I know that from Madison you had Neil O'Donnell, and Chatham right now has 2 fantastic athletes, and Chris Dart, the swimmer, and of course Billy Oliver, and they're to be celebrated, and I know we're going to follow all of them. Back in my class of '76, we had a swimmer, Kathy Hetty. I don't know how many of you remember her, but she participated in the Olympics, had a fantastic amateur career. We also had, in New Providence, we had Sid Kitson, who played in the NFL, and Billy Yard from Watchung. Both of them were classmates of mine at Wake Forest University, so we're proud of all of them. But of course, we're most proud of Willie. But before we show a little video, I do want to acknowledge a couple folks. Here in the front row, Coach Jim Dietz from Summit. Jim, stand up. Gil Oren, Mr. Summit Football. Art Cottrell. Art. And Dr. Don Geddes, former principal of Summit High School. And since it's a celebration of community, there's one person, Dom Guida, where are you? Dom Guida. Dom, just stand up. Dom was so important to a lot of us growing up. And Dom ran the recreation department. And Don is responsible for a lot of us getting involved in athletics. And Don, thank you very much for coming here. We're going to show you a little video, about 10 to 12 minutes. Willie Wilson highlights, courtesy of Bill Finnegan. Take it away. Have a seat, Willie.
Thanks, everybody, for coming. How about those 16-millimeter films, huh?
Willie, just give me one more minute. I forgot a few folks. The new Summit football coach just completed his first year, John Liberato. Stand up. John, Coach, I went to my first game in quite a while, in October, and you guys put on a great effort, won the game, and I was just very impressed with the job you're doing with the program. I know I myself will be more involved as a fan in the future, and I hope all of you Summit fans come and support Summit football. They deserve it. Frank Ria. Frank, can you stand up? Frank, you helped me an awful lot in getting a crowd here tonight, and I greatly appreciate it. And also, I just want to thank Bill Bennett from TV 36. We are going to be filming, well, we're filming it right now. And Bill, if you can let me know and let the community know when it's going to be on a loop. So, Willie, I'm putting away the notes.
Okay, Brian.
I think I've studied enough about your career. I think what the community needs to know is that between 1971 and 74, so Willie's 3 years in school, the combined record of the football, basketball, and baseball teams was 143, 25, and 1. Wow. 25, 1 and 1 in football, 67 and 9 in basketball. We don't even talk about Willie as a basketball player. He was the first 1,000-point scorer in school history. I've seen an awful lot of games, game accounts, where you had 20 points and 20 rebounds. And then in baseball, Willie's teams were 51 and 15. We won the Suburban Conference, or shared it, the first 8 sports. So up until senior year baseball. So eight Suburban Conference championships in the 9 sports over those 3 years. But I think a lot of folks would like to know about you coming to Summit. You were 7 years old. Maybe just say a few words about coming up from Alabama.
Yeah, but first I want to say to everybody, thank you for coming out. I know, it took a lot for you guys to come out, but I'm glad you're here. And I want to thank Brian for putting this on. We got together a couple years ago, and he kind of donated to my foundation. And then over the year, we've gotten a little bit closer and closer. And so, Brian, thank you, and thanks everybody for coming out. Let's see. A lot of you guys probably know, the guys my age are a little older. I know Dr. Gaddis and everybody. They know probably the story. But for you young guys, I was born in Montgomery, Alabama. And I came here at 6 years old. And we lived in Union, New Jersey for the first 2 months when I got here in New Jersey. And then ended up here in Summit going into the 3rd grade. One thing that my mom did that I'm grateful for, and I know that you guys probably over there, Dr. Geddes and everybody, and Art Cottrell probably got asked a lot of times about my birth certificate, which when I was in 3rd grade, I had a C average, and my mom didn't like that. So she made them put me back. So that's why I was 18 when I graduated. So let everybody know that. But it was a tough time for me because I had a Southern accent and living in New Jersey. And I really am grateful for Brian for doing this for me, because it gives me a chance to explain to you a lot of things that maybe a lot of people in Summit didn't understand and didn't know why. And so this is my opportunity. So I'm going to go ahead with it, whether you like it or not. But I got here, it was difficult for me. So I was kind of a quiet kid until things didn't go my way. Then I blew up in anger. So it was real, kept it inside, and then once something didn't go right, I kind of blew up. So guys that were important in my life, obviously Mr. Cottrell was important, Mr. Guido, very important, Howie Anderson, very important, and the most important guy that got me to after high school was Gil Loren. So it was a lot of people that helped me control what I needed to control. But growing up in Summit was a great opportunity for me, which you guys don't really realize it right now, but once you get out into this world, this is a great place to grow up. And it has a lot of opportunity for guys and people that grow up here. Once you get outside of here, you'll really realize how important this part of your life is. So it was just hard for me because I had to learn how to get a speech lessons and just dealing with a bunch of stuff. But it worked out well, and I got a chance to meet other guys that were in my grade that we became lifetime friends.
So now we're gonna move to 8th grade, and you told a little story today about Dom Guida specifically. So maybe describe that and getting into suburban baseball.
Yeah, well, in 8th grade, I think it was the summer of 7th and 8th grade. We're going back here 34, 35, 40 years, so my memory might be a little bit bad, but I think it's pretty good. So I wonder if you remember this, Mr. Guida. I was riding my bicycle over at Memorial Field, and really wasn't doing too much, just hanging around. You know what kids do. So Mr. Guida came up to me and he said, I can remember this, he goes, why don't you get off that bike and go over there and do something constructive? Kind of thought about it and like, okay, what do you want me to do? So he said, why don't you go join that baseball team over there? And I said, okay. So I went over there, and that's where I met Mr. Cottrell. And so those two people were very important in my life because he got me started in baseball, and he taught me a lot about baseball. And the catching job was open, but I really couldn't catch because I didn't know anything about catching. So I think Mr. Cottrell just let me pinch run, I think, for the first year, pinch run, pinch hit. And I can remember those uniforms because they were just T-shirts and then pants. And because I couldn't afford shoes, I had borrowed somebody's size 13s. And so my legs were so skinny, I had to put on 2 pair of really thick socks so that my legs would look bigger in those shoes. So that's how I started playing baseball here in Summit. So that was a really good memory.
All right, so now you get into high school. Actually, go back to the freshman year. What was your experience on the football team freshman year? Do you have many memories of that year?
A lot of memories. I was a quarterback, I know that. Yeah. That was kind of fun. There was Emil George. He was very important in my life at that part. He got me involved in football. He taught me a lot about football, and I wish he was here tonight. I don't know if he is, but he's a nice man. And so the first time I was there, I was equipment guy in 8th grade. That was the first job I did in 8th grade. So I was equipment guy, and then the next year I got a chance to play. So it was real, it was fun, but I got a chance to get into Summit. So that was fun.
All right, we're going to go through sophomore year. Did I see Paul Joyce from New Providence here? Oh, there you are, Paul. Paul and I went to school together at Wake Forest, and Paul was New Providence star quarterback. Actually started about midway through Willie's senior season. Paul was a sophomore. But back in 1971, we do have to give New Providence credit for a 12-0 win. It's the only loss hung on your team. So go New Providence. Paul, you can tell Sid and Doug and Mike Saba and all your buddies when you golf with them in a couple of months that we brought it up. But you were 9-0 as a junior. Did you win a sectional title? You may call if it was a sectional title or just 9. No, in football, 9-0.
You know, in football, he's asking me about sectional titles. I don't really know back in those days how they did that. All I know is we were 9-0, and that's all I cared about.
Hey, but now people are sniffing around, and the recruiting letters are coming through. So it's the beginning. It's fall of senior year. You know you're being heavily recruited. What was the relationship with you and Howie at that time, and what were you being told as far as the schools that were after you?
Well, if I can go back a little bit, I had to learn how to catch. So that's where Mr. Dietz comes in. He really taught me the fundamentals of catching. I remember him to this day, so when I do my camps, I can teach the kids. But, you know, with nobody on, get that throwing hand out the way. With nobody on, don't worry about a pretty good stance, but when somebody's on, you got to put the back leg behind here, you got to get the glove up, and you got to put it back here. And those things that people tell you that are important in your life, you remember them. And I'm 52, and I remember those things. So when you kids are listening to someone that you might not know, he's trying to help you guys. So sometimes, you know, you can listen. You might not like a lot of stuff, but you can listen. So go ahead, that was good.
Do you want me to list the 10 schools that you were?
Okay,
go back to Howie.
Howie, actually Howie was, who all remembers Killer? Anybody remember Killer in here? Yeah, Howie, I can remember him yelling that. Everybody trying to go to their drills, moaning. But Howie was a very, very important part of everything that I pretty much did in high school. He was the coach of 2 of my teams that I played on. He gave me a lot of advice as far as dates, not dates, stuff like that. You know, guys don't want to talk about that. But he also steered me away from trouble. But he also helped me out with my colleges to pick. And, you know, Howie was a Rutgers grad, so, of course, you know, Rutgers had to be in there. And I didn't pick it, but for him, I put him in the top 10. And so we came down to 10 schools. I don't know if I can't remember them.
Yeah, so the 10 schools that Howie picked were Nebraska, Oklahoma, USC, Notre Dame, Penn State, Rutgers, Michigan, Ohio State, Colorado, and Maryland. And the reason why I wanted to list them all is because I wanted Willie to talk about his 4 campus trips. And so you're going to go through them individually, and you can tell everything, almost. Yeah? So was Michigan the first one?
No, actually, Maryland was the first trip I went on. And it was actually the first time I'd ever been on a plane. I had to start off in Newark Airport, and I didn't get on a plane. I got on a helicopter, and it flew me to JFK. And I went through the city of New York. Never being on a plane before, I was terrified. And I'm still terrified to this day of planes. I get that same feeling, my hands sweat. I just break out, and I don't like flying, but I had to do it pretty much all my career, and I got to do it now. So Maryland was my first trip. I got to Maryland. Jerry Claiborne was the coach, and the first guy I ran into was Walter White. Walter White ended up being the tight end for the Kansas City Chiefs. So we began our relationship in 1974, Walter White, and we know each other to this day. And we went to a party at the campus. And that was funny. But the basketball team, I'm thinking about it right now, the basketball team was Lefty, I think Lefty Gazelle, he was the basketball coach, and they had a bunch of good guys on there. They were just really good. The university at the time was 11th in the nation, and they were becoming a powerhouse, I thought. So there's a knock on the door, and Walter White's there with me telling me about Maryland, this and that. And the guy opens the door, and he turns around and he goes, "Hey, it's Navy." Well, before I know it, there were fights, hands, and stuff going, and I hear the campus police, and Walter goes, "I think we should go out the back." So we went out the back way, and I said, "Man, I love this campus." I love being here. So, you know, that was the first one I went to, and I just fell in love with the people. And another reason was it was only 3.5 hours away from here. My mom could come down and watch me, and so that was one of the main reasons. That was the first time. A lot of times you're doing this, and we played games on Friday night. I would wake up, leave Saturday morning, do a quick thing in the college and come back Sunday night and then go to school Monday. This was all going on through basketball season. So it was really kind of hectic. And the funny part about it was my mother had no idea what was going on. She just, if you mess up with your grades, I'm taking you off that sports. That's all she thought about. So she had no idea in the beginning. So I'm saying this to tell you later on the story. So anyway, I go to Michigan, and that was a sight to be seen right there. And Michigan was great. The place was just huge. We went 20 minutes, I thought, across the town, and it was part of the campus in a car. So they had 5 running backs on the squad, and I didn't think that I was going to make one of those 5. So I canceled Michigan right away, but I love Bo Schembechler. Then I got to meet Woody Hayes at Ohio State. And at that time, he was still sane, I think. So he was a really good guy at that time. But my roommate was, that weekend, was Archie Griffin. So funny how things happen, huh? And he ends up being, you know, pretty good, huh? So he would order 3 steaks and take 2 home. And we'd go out to eat, and he'd order, charge it to the university, and then he'd take the other 2, and then they'd go home. So that was kind of fun. But what they did was they took me to a Gladys Knight and Pips concert on Ohio State, and they set me up with a date. I had no idea it was a date. I was a jock. So it was really funny. And so good night, and I went home, and that was it. And then the next place I went was Colorado, and I didn't like Colorado because they were giving me, you could have 8 tickets, sell them back to the alumni. To me, that was wrong. And growing up here, I knew the difference between right and wrong, so I canceled them out. So after that, it was so hectic going everywhere that I just finally walked around the block one day, just kept walking around, and just finally said, you know what, I'm going to sign with Maryland. I don't need to go any other place. I wanted to go there anyway. So I can remember Ernie Guapney, if he's here, Ernie, we used to sit in the senior lounge. I guess there was, what, a couple sofas by the cafeteria with a couple of petitions, and that was the senior lounge. And we would hear coaches coming down the hallway arguing. Why come you wouldn't let us come in there and see him? He doesn't. Oh, and I'm like, wow. And Ernie's looking at me, and I'm looking at him. And then we'd see, all kind of guys coming in there. Majors came in from Pitt. He was kind of pissed off. Paterno came in there, and Ernie recognized him before I did. So he was just, it was kind of fun because everybody was walking through mad. And so Howie just told him he made up his mind, and that was it. And so that's how that got started. So that was going on all through basketball season. Baseball hasn't even come around yet.
No, but you just reminded me, as a fan, when I was a sophomore and Willie's a senior, I wrote Johnny Majors because both of my parents had gone to University of Pittsburgh. So I was a Pitt fan, and Tony Dorsett, his first year was 1973, and he rushed for 1,586 yards that first year. So I wrote Majors, and I said, I want you to be sure that you're recruiting Willie Wilson. Now, of course, I had no idea what was going on in the process. This is the actual letter that Johnny Majors sent me back. Dear Brian, thank you so much for your letter and information about Willie Wilson. We have a coach in the area, Jim Dyer, who's very interested in recruiting Willie. We were informed by his high school coach that Pitt was not in the running and we could not visit Willie. We would appreciate any help you could give us. Me. For we believe that Tony Dorsett and Willie Wilson in the same backfield to win a national championship. Thanks very much and good luck. Sincerely, John Majors.
How about that, huh?
Yeah.
As a sophomore.
Yep.
See, Brian was seeing things way before I did.
Well, so now we're not even talking about basketball season, but you had 3 awesome years. But you decide to sign the letter of intent with Maryland. Do you remember what Claiborne told you? There was something that really
Oh yeah, he stressed education. He stressed education all the time. He didn't talk about getting tickets to somewhere or no-show jobs. You go to a cafeteria and you wax the floors, but you don't show up. You just get a check. So I couldn't do that. So, and he talked strictly education and you earn your way. And another thing they did was they ran kind of the same offense that Summit ran. So it was easier for me to fit right in with it. And so he just said the right things and the people were good. And I just thought that they were a good fit for me.
All right, so now you're starting baseball season. You actually got off to a rough start. It was Art Cottrell's first year as baseball coach. You're only 3-6 at the start that season. And you finished real strong, but what was your thought process? And then I'm going to start bringing up Don and Art and Gil.
Well, I don't know what my thought process, evidently it wasn't too good. I remember I was in a car accident one game, and there was a bunch of scouts there, and I didn't really want, I was kind of, what'd you say, an attitudinal guy there? I probably had an attitude a day or two, but it was tough, but it was tougher for Art because he had to deal with me and dealing with all the stuff that was going on. And what I wanted to do was, you know, you never think about it when you're a young man, but I wanted to say to the team how sorry I was for them waiting on the bus all the time. Because every time I would finish a game, a scout would say, okay, we need you to go out in the outfield and throw. And the team would have to, whether they were sweaty or thirsty or whatever, they had to sit on the bus and wait for me to go through this. And, you know, it took a lot not to be jealous. It took a lot not to dislike me and all that stuff because of the stuff that you wanted to do yourself. And I think that because the grades, and I'm only coming from my point of view, but because those 3 classes got along so well, starting when I was a sophomore and then when I finished, we got along great with the guys in front of us, and we got along great with the classes below us. And I don't think it would have been possible if there was a lot of animosity around and if people just didn't want it to happen.
Don, Art, and Gil, why don't you come up now? And Don, why don't you say a few words first? Don Geddes was the principal then, and also one heck of a fast-pitch softball pitcher back in the day with the West Summit Garage. For all you Summit fans might remember Pete Connie and Willie Horn, who had biceps out to about here. Don, take it away. Is this mic on? Sir, is this mic on?
Okay. Willie, you may have been born in another state, but this is home. Welcome home, Willie.
Thanks.
In preparation for tonight, I have often been asked, what was the most outstanding athletic event that you were witness to as far as Willie Wilson is concerned, sports notwithstanding, whatever you want to say? It's very clear in my mind. It was the coldest day I've ever experienced in my entire existence. It was at the Pioneer Field in New Providence, and it was an awful day. It was opening kickoff, and nobody ever laid a hand on him. Length of the field, and he scored a touchdown. Matter of fact, he scored more than one. But the event was marked in my mind every time I saw this on television on the Channel 36 Summit Football because the film captured on the sidelines the reaction of the editor in charge of athletics for the Summit Independent, who watched as Willie ran by. And he was so upset, Mr. Polakowski, that he took his clipboard and threw it into the ground, and it bounced about 3 feet in the air. I had to interpret that as a partisan reaction. Very oftentimes, we have been asked, I have been asked, because people assumed that we didn't have the same rules in place for Willie Wilson that we did for 900 other students. And it was assumed, properly so, that the standards and expectations for Willie Wilson were not the same as they were for other students. And that's true. They weren't. They were tougher. Believe me when I tell you that those of us who recognized his talent knew that part of the educational process was consistency and to try to teach this young man that he had to respect everyone. And I think we succeeded in that. And I think I can honestly say that the standards for Willie Wilson were not the same. I think I can honestly say that they were higher. As a matter of fact, Willie and I had several interesting conversations in the confines of my office discussing various choices that he made or might have made or shouldn't have made. The other item that I'd just like to touch on was those people who had the greatest influence on the guy that's sitting over here on the stage, and I think he would agree with me. It's very difficult for people who are not in education as close as many of you are, and as I have been for 40 years, to really understand and acknowledge the influence that athletic coaches have on young men and young women in our schools. There just is no equal to it. The strength of an educational staff is sometimes measured by the number of graduate degrees, and that's one measure. But I was blessed for many years in Summit High School of having a school staff who were not only academically sound, but were very decent human beings. And I would place at the head of the list the Howie Andersons of this world, the Jim Dietz, the Art Cottrells. John Liberato was picked up where these fellows left off in their careers. You just cannot possibly appreciate or understand the influence. He would not be sitting there now if it wasn't for Howie Anderson and the other men who influenced him through 4 years of high school. Willie, have a good day always and in all ways. But before I leave, since Willie brought up his academic record,
don't tell me you have a copy of it. How was that?
Wasn't that bad.
Just happened to have an official transcript, which I'd like to present to Willie, okay?
Thank you. Thanks. Hey, I want to thank Dr. Geddes for being here, but I got a quick story I wanted to share with you guys. With Dr. Geddes had the unfortunate, or fortunate, whatever way you want to look at it, of kicking me out of school for a week. And it was my fault, but I know he doesn't want to talk about that.
Yes, I do.
But we had a substitute teacher, and I was supposed to go to the baseball game, and the substitute teacher didn't know anything about it. He wasn't going to let me go. So we had a guy in our class named Aubrey Lawton. Yeah. So Aubrey kind of picked some stuff with me, and then Bobby Gregory, if you know Bobby Gregory, he's egging me on. You're going to let him say that about you, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, we got into a fight, and I got kicked out of school and I missed 2 games. And to this day, I wanted to know what Dr. Geddes thought about that.
Well, I'll tell you what I thought, but I can reiterate the exact conversation. Picture the high school principal sitting behind his desk. It's the end of the day. There's been no excitement, getting ready to go home, play a little softball, whatever, okay? The bus is waiting at the curb to take the team to New Providence for the opening day of baseball season. Am I right, Willie? Okay. I look up from my desk, and I see our athletic director standing with his arms folded in this manner. Now, after you've been a high school principal for as long as I was, you know this is not a good sign. And Willie is standing next to him in this posture. And I thought, well, I got to make whatever this is go away, because I don't want to deal with it. I said, well, Coach, what happened here? And he said, well, Willie, tell Doc what happened. Well, a little bit of body language, you know. He said, well, I punched the kid's lights out. I said, I really don't want to deal with this, you know. I said, okay, where did this happen, Willie? Hoping that maybe it happened downtown someplace, off school grounds. He said, well, it happened in, I think he said English class. I forget what class it was. And I said, you're telling me that you punched the kid's lights out in front of 27 witnesses and a teacher? Yes. So I said, Willie, we're going to make a baseball game out of this. I said, there's a man on first and a man on third. He said, oh, I got it, Doc. I said, you're the man on third. He said, right. I said, a ball is hit in right field. What do you do? Oh, he said, I go home, Doc. I said, right, 5 days. Get your butt out of here. You're coming. But that's not the end of the story. A year later, I go to the Yankee Stadium with my wife to see who playing center field for the Kansas City Royals. He's warming up in front of the dugout, and he sees me, and he turns and he says, I can't believe you did that. And I said, you're not going to forget it. He said, I'm never going to forget it. He kept right on.
Thanks, Dr. Geddes.
Art.
God bless. Thank you.
Art.
I think I should answer a few questions that I get asked so very, very frequently. And one of which is, if Willie is so fast, why is he catching? And I'm responsible. I guess for that I have to take the blame for it. Mike Jemison, who was our catcher, this was in the suburban league. These are generally 8th, 9th graders, 13 to 15 years of age, just before they're entering high school. Mike Jemison was our catcher, who was a tremendous football and baseball player in his own right. And Mike had to go on vacation with his family. So I said, Willie, I think you're going to have to catch for a few weeks, you know, because he's going to be away. And so Willie became a catcher. And that was that. He was a catcher then for the rest of his high school career until he went to professional baseball. And he was scouted by every team going, obviously, and many, many scouts that we had at every single game. And I used to ask them, am I right or wrong in having him catching? And about half of the scouts would tell me that because there's such a scarcity of catchers and good catchers in the major leagues, that their team would keep him as a catcher. And about the other half of the teams would transfer him to playing in the outfield. So I figured that I was about 50 right and 50 wrong. Another question that I get asked frequently was that why didn't he play on varsity, you know, as a freshman? See, my first 7 or 8 years, I was the freshman coach, and then Howie and I were made department chairman, and we both had to give up a sport. So I became the head coach, and Howie dropped baseball, and I couldn't coach with the football team anymore. But he couldn't play on varsity because the rule in the state is that you must be in the high school. And at that time, we had a system of 3-year junior high, not a middle school. And when he was in the 9th grade, he was good enough to play probably in college at that point, but he could not play because of the rules. So he played in the 9th grade on the freshman team. And gives me a kind of a line for a story I had. We went over to Cedar Grove one day to play, and their best field was very muddy, and they sent us over to play on I guess it was a middle school or a smaller field anyway. But out in outfield was pretty good size, but still smaller than what we usually played on. There were woods out there that went for hundreds and hundreds of yards. Well, Willie got up, and he hit a ball that may still be going. And I'll try to imitate the umpire. The umpire gets down, and he's like this making the ball, and that ball hit. And just went an umpire like this. And he just goes around me like this, like, what are you doing, Art? Is this guy playing ninth grade? Well, I didn't know what to say, but they were the rules at the time. And so he was playing with the ninth grade, but that ball was hit as far as any ball I have ever seen. I coached baseball for 21 years. I have never seen a ball hit that far. And it was a ninth grade game, and it's into the woods by about 150 yards, it looked like. It was a long shot. I guess the other thing probably that you're interested in is the amount of scouts that were at our games all the time. There was never a game that we played in his senior year that we didn't have at least from 5 to 20 scouts there. We played a night game down at St. Peter's in New Brunswick, and that's back when you couldn't play night baseball games in the Union County. And the scouts wanted to see him play under the lights, and they knew that we were playing at St. Peter's in New Brunswick. So we had 21 scouts there. Can you imagine? And you deal with all these people all the time. And of course, Willie didn't disappoint them. He hit a shot down the left field line, and he was on third base before you could blink the lights. He was so fast. But it was quite an exciting time to have in my first year as varsity coach. It was much easier coaching the freshmen because the newspapers don't call you. Nobody asks you anything at all. With the varsity, it's a little different, and of course, with an athlete of his caliber, you can imagine the amount of attention that was directed at our team. But it was a lot of fun. A lot of teams wanted him, and the question that I was asked constantly was, will he sign? Will he sign if we draft him? And that's a big question because the way the draft is, even today, that first-round pick, and he would have been certainly a first pick in the first round, not just a first-round pick, which he was, but he would have been probably the first or second pick in the nation. But they cannot risk making that pick, and then he decides to go to play football. So that was a question, and nobody really had the answer, right, Willie?
No, nobody had.
It was a tough question. He had a hard time deciding. And it looked at that time that he was going to go to Maryland and play. And so it was an interesting thing. I must have answered that question.
I'm not cutting you off, but I have the baseball draft. And this is the first round in 1974. And boy, I should have had my glasses here. But the very first pick in the draft turned out to be Bill Allman. That might be a name somewhat familiar, and he was at Brown at the time. But Willie ended up dropping down, and we're going to let you describe your draft day, but selected ahead of him, instead of being number 1, were Lonnie Smith, who was number 3, Dale Murphy, who only hit about 390 home runs. He was number 6. Lance Parrish was selected before Willie. Gary Templeton. I mean, this was one hell of a draft. It also had Rick Sutcliffe, all of them in the first round. So, Willie, why don't you go through draft day, and Art, do you want to have any other comments? Or, no,
that's fine. Okay. He was the 18th pick in the first round, but there's no doubt that he would have been either 1, 2, or 3 had he indicated that he was going to sign. Because the 3 teams that had those picks had all expressed that, but they couldn't be certain, didn't want to take a chance. And the day that he was signed, or actually the day that he was drafted, Al Diaz was the scout for Kansas City. I had never seen Al Diaz at a game. I said, Al, where did you come from? You know, I've never seen you. All the other scouts were there all the time. He said, we were there. I said, but why did you choose him? Because it doesn't look like you'd be able to sign him. He says, we will be able to sign him, don't worry. So that was the way it turned out.
Thanks, Mr. Cottrell.
Thank you, Art.
I just want to say to Mr. Cottrell, I apologize for 1974 with all that going on. You know, you don't really know what is happening when you're going through it, but as you get older, you realize that there was a lot going on, there was a lot of pressure on you, and I'm glad you didn't crack. So thank you. What were you saying about the draft day?
Yeah, just go through draft day and...
The draft day, I think it was June 5th. Very hectic day. I think 10 to 12 teams called me, starting from Philadelphia all the way down and from order. And I would just answer the phone. My mother was pretty hectic about answering the phone, so I answered the phone, and then I'd say, I'm going to go play football, hang up. Going to go play football, hang up. And then I had to go to school. And then when I got to school, Ed Lyons came up to me and said, congratulations, you're drafted #1 by Kansas City. And I got mad. Not because I didn't want to be drafted, but it was because I didn't want to play baseball at all. I love football. I love baseball, but I was in love with football. And there's a difference. So I was very disappointed about what was happening, but my mom had gotten fired because she had to make a choice, either go to work or come to the Thanksgiving Day game. So I decided to take the money. But in those years, that was the first year that you were allowed to play a professional sport and then go back to college and play a sport without it being professional. But before that, if you played any professional sport, you were not allowed to go and play any sport in college. So I don't know if you guys knew that. Did you guys know that there was no dunking in the 70s either? So that was kind of crazy. But so when Kansas City drafted me, I was disappointed. But then when I figured out how much, what can I get, and that's when Howie did one of the other great things that he did in my life. He went to Gale Orr. And he talked to Gil, and he asked Gil to do him a favor for me. And Gil went with me.
Gil, you're going to describe that story.
Gil went with me to Kansas City. Gil, Howie Anderson, my mom, and I just let you take it from there.
Well, when you mentioned the plane ride you didn't want to take,
Yeah.
we took a plane ride to Kansas City. And I hadn't been on a plane too much myself. So we got into the hotel, if you remember this or not, and we got up to about the 12th, 13th floor, went into the room, and there's a big sign. It said, in case of a tornado, go to the bathroom. And that's exactly what I would have done if a tornado came. Whether I was in the bathroom or not. But they say it's stronger in the bathroom and so on and so forth. But I said, well, I don't know what we're doing out here, but we'll survive. There's an old saying, there's never a wrong time to do the right thing. Ryan, thank you for doing the right thing. You can tell Willie Wilson is proud of Summit, New Jersey. Summit, New Jersey is proud of Willie Wilson. I was in Savannah, Georgia this last week. We were out for dinner, and we were with this couple. He was from Charleston, South Carolina, and he said, Summit, that's where Willie Wilson's from. And I'm sure you've had the same experience. Willie is proud of Summit, and we're proud of Willie because it puts Summit on the map. We're on the map for many reasons, but it's Willie. I don't know whether you remember this or not, but I'll hand this to you while I'm talking. Those are the pictures that we had from Kansas City. Satchel Paige was there,
Yeah.
and it was great. Howie, briefly, I had a very limited role. Howie did call me and he said, I think Willie's going to sign with Kansas City and we got to get some help. So I called an accountant, Noken Hurd, Insurance man, Chan Coddington, bank. Hilltop wasn't in the business then, but it was Summit Trust Company for investment and banking. They all volunteered their services. We did the best we could to help Willie evaluate everything, and he was nice enough to take me to Kansas City with him. We met Ewan Kaufman, the owner of and John Sherholz, who not only was great in Kansas City, but great at Atlanta.
And Joe Burke.
And Luke Gorman.
Yeah, Luke Gorman.
It was a thrill for me, being a sports fan. I was glad I was a lawyer, because Howie felt that I could bring something to the table there, and I hope I did. It was a big thrill. I was surprised that Willie was signing football, and I have if anybody's interested, I have the pictures of what occurred out there. Connie Anderson put them together after the trip, and it shows Willie's first, as we were walking out after he had been introduced with Satchel Paige and so on. A little kid came up and said, "Could I have your autograph?" We have a picture of Willie giving his first autograph to a fan, first of many. Also remember sitting in that room. There's a picture of that, and Willie was signing, and Howie said to me, "There goes the best football player that ever lived." And John Sherholz overlooked that. He says, "He'll be all right in baseball, relax." And sure enough, he was. There are 4 people, too, Willie, that aren't here tonight, that played a big role in your life, that I had an opportunity to see, observe, and meet. Your grandmother.
Yes.
We can't forget her.
Right.
Your mother.
Right.
Howie. And then Wally Binford.
Yes, sir.
There wasn't a time that you were in the majors that Wally wasn't walking his 10 miles around Summit with his jacket on, and he passed on. And right at Wally's funeral, there was a bouquet of flowers from Willie Wilson. So you didn't forget the people that helped you along the way, and Summit does not forget you, Willie.
Thanks, Gil.
You're a big part of Summit.
All right, thank you. Hey, you know, Gil doesn't, I don't know if he remembers this, but we were sitting there and talking to Mr. Burke and Lou Gorman and Sherholz, and I wasn't allowed to say anything because I was an amateur. So I would have to look at Gil, say exactly what I wanted to say to them to Gil, and Gil would in turn say exactly what I just said to them, and then they would have to talk to Gil, and then until we agreed, that's how the conversation went. Like that for, what, an hour or 2 hours? And all my mom kept saying is, for her, I mean, it was a lot of money for me, but at that time she kept saying, "Are you sure they're gonna give us that money?" And it became us immediately. And that's when I was getting back to that story when she didn't know what was going on. When I became a senior and things started going, she'd say, "You mess up on the sports, on the grades, I'm gonna take you off sports." And then all of a sudden, when I was a senior, she'd go, "You want any new sneakers? A new pair of pants?" I mean, she was all of a sudden really, really nice. And then I know why, because it became us and we and all that stuff. But yeah, she was a great lady. She still is a great lady. She's down in Alabama right now. My grandmother, God bless her, she passed. But I also wanted to give my acknowledgement to Mr. Benford, who passed about a week or so ago, and also Mr. Davis, Donald Davis. I don't know if he's here. He passed 2 days ago. So I just want to give my condolences and hope that everybody's going to be well with that. So there you go.
I just have to mention that I left a decent job on Wall Street about 9 years ago, and I used to do a lot of public speaking, and I haven't done a lot the last 9 years, and I missed an awful lot of things that we should have covered. And one thing is, your senior year, you were hurt in the first game of the season, you re-injured yourself in the second game, and go through the hospital story. And
well, first of all, I want to say to everybody that played with me, and especially guys that were, you know, playing and having fun with us, it wouldn't have been possible without any of those guys. And I say that because Ernie's sitting over there, and Ernie Guafney was a pretty good athlete in his own right. And I just want people to know that wherever Ernie went, I followed. Ernie was that good, and I knew if he went that way, somebody was going to go down. So I had to go the opposite way. And without Ernie and guys like Johnny Fouché and Brad Paxton and George Gross and just Anthony Zachary, Bobby Gregory, Dave Mugford, there's just all those guys who we played not because of Willie, it was because we were a good team. And we played well as a team, and we got along as a team. And when you can put that combination together, it doesn't matter what kind of athletes you have, they're going to win. And I feel that that's why we won. It was pride, it was tradition, and I think Howie kept that alive for us.
Now, before we talk about the Overlook story, you mentioned something about Ernie to me as far as hitting people.
Well, yeah, Ernie, if Ernie wanted to be a scorer and he wanted to score like I was, he could do it. But I think Ernie just liked hitting people better than he liked scoring. He was a linebacker, so he took pride in hitting people, and he took pride in stopping people. And I think it made my job easier because on safety, I really didn't want to hit anybody unless I had to. And if you saw me running, my thing was to get away from people. I didn't want to hit anybody. I just wanted to see if I could get by him or around him, and the object was to score points. It wasn't to see how hard you could run into a guy, so I figured that out really quick. I didn't want to run into this guy if I didn't have to. So, but Ernie and all those guys that played with us, they were good athletes, but Ernie, I thought, without him, I wouldn't be anywhere.
Well, Ernie, you were first team, Group 3, All-State as a linebacker, and actually Ernie was in some of the film clips. You had one hell of a career, and that's why I wanted you here in the worst way. So thanks again for coming, Ernie.
Thanks, Ernie. Right on, booby.
All right, you're at Overlook. You got a back injury. You have a visitor.
Okay, well, that game, I'd hurt my back on the second game, I think, of the year, and I stayed out. Funny story, my mom is in the stands, and I'm like this on the bench, and I look up, and she's right there. And I'm like, Mom, you can't be here. It's like, you know, I'm looking like a really bad wuss. You know, like, you gotta go. So she didn't want to leave. So anyway, I think I played the next game. I tried to get over it, and I played the next game and got re-injured again. And that's when Ernie took over and scored all of the points for us in Berkeley Heights. And I think I was out for the next game, missed the next game. So I missed about...
Actually, Ernie had like 140 yards on just 16 carries as Willie's main replacement. And in one of our classmates, George, Jeff Hunt, substituted officially for you, and he had about 80 yards in that game, and Andy Nessler scored a touchdown, so everybody contributed.
Everybody contributed, and that's what I'm saying. If I wasn't there, I think we still would have won. That's how good I think that we were. And, you know, these 16 millimeters for you young guys doesn't give us justice. It really makes us look like we're running in slow motion. You guys are used to the DVDs and stuff like that, right? But we were really running fast, and we were moving a little bit quicker than we looked. So, but yeah, it was really fun back then.
Okay, so you're lying on your back in the hospital.
Yeah, I'm lying on my back, and then all of a sudden, I'm in the hospital, and I look up, and Howie walks through the door, and behind him walks Gale Sayers. And I don't know if you guys, and guys my age can heard of Gale Sayers, but Gale Sayers was one of the best. I tried to be like him. That was, I had two idols, Gale Sayers, and I had a catcher. He was Manny Sanguillen, and it was the only black catcher I knew about with the Pittsburgh Pirates. So those were my guys. So when he walked in the door, laying in the bed trying to get up, you know, with a cracked bone in my back, and he just says, just relax, take your time. And he must have said, after that, I don't know what he said. I was like in a fog. the whole time he was there, but he was there recruiting me for Kansas University. So needless to say, I didn't go there, but just to meet him was...
Well, Willie, one person who wishes she could be here tonight, excuse me, is Howie Anderson's daughter, Wendy Anderson McKenna. And Wendy was in my class, our class of 76. Now, I talked to Wendy on the phone the other day, and she distinctly remembers picking up the phone at home, and it was Gale Sayers. And for your younger folks, understand that the movie Brian's Song came out in 71 and was played an awful lot, 71, 72, 73. So everybody knew the story about Gale Sayers and Brian Piccolo. So that was Wendy's main memory, and she has very fond memories of you and the relationship you had with Howie.
We used to hang out over there now and then. We'd go over to Howie's house, and he had all the, we do the, what were they called? Not the sock hops, but they were before the games. The pregame, we'd have like movies, show movies.
Pep rallies.
Yeah. That's it. So, yeah, it was fun back in those days.
And something very important that I missed, his senior year, so they go 9-0, so that's back-to-back 9-0 seasons. Most importantly, Summit won the total, or the state title, and back then, this was before playoffs. And of course, Gil knows this real well, and Art, and Dr. Geddes. But they had computer rankings, and Summit was a Group 3 school. We were a Group 3 school, and when the final computer ranking came out, after our 27-0 whitewashing of New Providence, sorry, Paul Joyce, with Willie scoring all the points, the computer spit out that Summit was #1. We beat out like 4 Group 4 schools, including Bloomfield, which was a huge power back then. So congratulations to the Summit program. That's the state title for us.
Westfield was a powerhouse back then, too, I think. Westfield was. You know, I know the guys, we seem like this is, I don't know, we're talking about the 70s, but, you know, it was a little different back then. The 70s, you know, they sheltered kids from a lot of things. And what they did was they made athletics and sports fun. And I feel like if we can get that back, making it fun for the kids, and the parents having something good to talk about, it makes it a little bit easier. And you know, winning solves a lot of things. When you're winning, solves a lot of problems.
We have some questions out there. Anyone with some questions? Mark?
What's the significance of 21?
What's the significance of 21?
Well, you know, that was the 21, and he said, what's the significance of 21? Well, first guy that wore it was Tommy Odell. And
Tommy, Johnny Mallory, and Willie are the only 3 to have their uniforms retired, so that Willie and Tommy are sharing that. Can I just tell a quick Tommy Odell story? Tommy Odell was obviously an awesome All-State defensive back for Summit. He went on to Penn State. And in 1975, November of 75, now remember I was a Pitt fan and all our family was Pitt fans. Pitt played Penn State. This was a Pitt team with Dorsett. It was his junior year. And Penn State won 7-6. And Summit's Tommy Odell blocked a field goal and blocked the extra point. The field goal was with just a minute left. And I don't know if you fanatics out there, it was Carson Long was the Pitt kicker, and I think he was the last straight-on kicker back then. So Tommy Odell, big-time sports hero. He's the other one that has his uniform retired.
Right.
Willie?
Yeah, and TOD, I mean, that's what I called him, TOD. But, you know, picking that number when all the guys that played football, Howie would, you know, the numbers would be called out, what number you wanted, and at the end, he went by, I think it was alphabetical. So I was last, and the only number left was 21. So it turned out well, but, you know, that was it. That's how Howie did it, and that's how, you know, he did things the way he did it. And you either followed the rules, and that's the way it was. But I didn't mind. I loved it because it was, who else would you want to share 21 with? I mean, Johnny Mallory, when he played, you know, we went to a couple games that he played in Philly and stuff like that, and to see how the people got behind him, it's just really, it was fun to see him bring, remember the time, Johnny, when you brought back the players to play basketball at the high school? That was pretty neat too. See, the stuff like that is what I remember, and the stuff like that, you know, with people who left this city to go play other places, Johnny, Tommy, you know, you wanted to do this when you came back, and the reason I couldn't come back a lot was every time I signed a contract, the Royals said you'd have to stay here. So if you signed 4 years here, you got to stay here. Well, I signed 4 years, 4 years, 4 years. So I couldn't come back to Summit where I wanted to stay. So it just got to the point where I got so used to being out there, all my kids were born out there, that I just stayed there. But I've always wanted to come back here, to be here, to grow up here again and live my life here.
Any other questions?
Right here. Yes, sir.
What was the best game you've ever seen or played?
Is that me? Best game I ever seen or played. Now we're talking high school? Anything. Well, I'm going to say the best game I seen was the last game of the 1985 World Series. That's the best one I've seen. The best game I think I played was, God, if we're talking baseball, it is, we played Milwaukee Brewers. We were down 9-2 in the 8th inning, and I hit 2 3-run home runs. We came back to win 11-9. Anybody?
How many inside the park home runs did you have?
I think it was 13 inside the park home runs, but you know, I didn't know, playing here in Summit, we didn't have fences. So running around the bases was just what I did. So when I got to play baseball, they thought, wow, you can run around the bases. Well, I was doing that since I was in 8th grade. So it wasn't anything new. It was just that it was new because they had never seen it before. And I think for my first 4 years, I never hit a ball outside the ballpark. They were all inside. So it was really different from that point of view.
Any other questions?
Don't be shy.
Didn't you play in, I was watching a Yankee game a year ago, and they showed a picture of Kenny Singleton and one other player, and you were there in Western Equipment. Didn't you play in Japan once?
Yes, played, actually won a couple games over there, late inning heroics. We played in Japan. You know, I've gotten a chance to meet emperors, presidents, just unbelievable stuff, you know, and it's kind of hard to go around and say, you know, I saw this guy, I met that guy, and you don't want to be a big hit, but you sit back now and you go, wow, that was pretty neat. But we played Japan over there, and I went over there twice, and you stay for a month, and it's the longest flight I had ever been on in my life. And in that time, you had to go to New York to Anchorage, Alaska, and then Alaska to Japan. And just going from New York to Anchorage was far enough. But we played the American League and National League. We toured over there, All-Star, and then we played 2 games against the Japanese. And I traded jackets with Sawahara. So that was pretty neat. And if you guys don't know who Sawahara is, he was the home run champion over there in Japan. And at the time, Hank Aaron was being our home run champion, so he was their home run champion. And so I got a chance to take his jacket, and I gave him a Royal jacket. And I don't know if I still have it. It's down there somewhere, but it's reversible. And that was the first time I'd seen like a reversible jacket, you know, black on one side and orange and black on the other. So that was pretty neat.
Any other questions?
Are you still involved in Major League Baseball?
No, I'm not involved in Major League Baseball. I was a coach for a couple years, 3 years to be exact, in the Arizona Diamondbacks organization. And I was a coach when we beat the Yankees in '01, so I don't want to say that too loud. But that's as far as I went. And then I was in my 40s, and I just got tired of them telling me what to do. You know, I've been in professional baseball since I was 17, and they've been telling me what to do, how to be, how to act, and you don't even know me. You just know of me. You know, you don't know me. So I just said, you know what, I'm going to do something different. Took a little bit of time off and came up with, let's just do camps for kids. And that's how I started off with my foundation. And by word of mouth here in Summit, we did one camp that nobody thought we could do, and we had about 60, 70 kids. And from there, it's been heaven, man, because, you know, kids tell you the truth. And if a kid don't like you, something's wrong. So kids and dogs. So I felt like we got along well. I really like teaching kids because once the light comes on, it makes the game so much easier for them because it's going really fast for them right now. And once they do just a couple things, the game just slows down, and then they're able to play the game. Whereas if you don't know that, the game really looks quick all the time.
Why don't you say a few words about the Negro Leagues Museum? That's how I got to know Willie last fall, and I've been to the Negro Leagues Museum in Kansas City. It's a fantastic museum. But Willie was the moderator. Why don't you just describe the October event?
I don't know if a few years ago I had a golf tournament here, and I don't know if you guys had the privilege of meeting Buck O'Neill. And Buck O'Neill was with the Royals organization since I was drafted. And he used to come to spring training, and I got to know him well, and he got to come over to the house, and it was just fun to be around. But Buck started a museum in Kansas City, the Negro League Museum, and he was their spokesman for it, and he went around and can tell a story as good and with the vivid memory of a 94-year-old man that you'd ever want to know. And he died a couple years ago last year, and so we miss him, but he got me involved in it. And what I did last year was I go to all their events. I learned so much about the Negro League baseball, stuff that I didn't know. Did you know that Satchel Paige had his own private plane? A lot of people didn't know that. Satchel Paige made more money than he did barnstorming than he did when he played professional ball. And he had his own private plane, and he took people from Kansas City to Cuba, Dominican, got part of the proceeds. He got the gate. So he was working way back when. I didn't even know that, you know? And so you learn things about what was going on back then that basically what was going on now in baseball. It's, you know, you love the game, but as an owner, it's about money. As a player, you're playing with your heart. So I got involved with that, and I do some stuff. And last year, remember The Bronx is Burning? Last year ran. It wasn't true. Well, you know that, right? All that stuff in 1977, it wasn't me rounding the bases in 77. It was 78. So what we wanted to do was tell the true story of, because before they got to the World Series against LA, they had to play us, the Royals. And so we wanted to have the Yankee panel and the Royals panel, and that's when Brian came out. And Helen Moore, who was back there from Type A Events. Helen, where are you? Stand up.
All right. Helen is Willie's business partner.
She gets the events, and so she started this event, and we had Jay Johnstone there. We had, if you can refresh my memory, who else was there?
Yeah, you had Amos Otis and Frank White.
I know
Freddie
the Royals.
Pontek.
I'm trying to get the Yankees.
No,
we had Paul
Doc
Blair, we had Doc Ellis, and we had Jimmy Wynn and Jay Johnstone. And the reason we had Jimmy Wynn was the guy who held back Reggie in Boston. And we wanted to hear the real story, what had happened. And Jimmy said nobody liked Reggie. He didn't even like him. And he had to walk back to the hotel with him that day. So he didn't like, and so, you know, we just had the real story. And so we do little things like that to keep the game alive. We do little things like that for people who want to hear what went on in the 70s and the 60s. And we try to do events, but what we try to do in these events, we attach them to some kind of foundation, like the Children's Miracle Network is the one that we work with. And we try to donate money to them through these events because, you know, what you do is what they remember you by. And if you're going to do something, you might as well try to do it good. So that's where I'm at in my life, and that's what I do, and that's what I love, helping kids. And these are mostly underprivileged kids, but all kids can benefit.
About one last question.
I don't have a question, Willie, but I was fortunate enough to play golf with you that day.
Yeah.
We had a great time. It's about sport and having fun, and we had a great day. But I have a comment. And it's great to see so many people from Summit in this room, but even better, it's great to see people who have moved into Summit and who have brought their kids here and who will get to meet you tonight and really get to know how Summit was when we were kids growing up, and watching idols like you, our idols, you know, and the Guapnis and the Fouchés and all the names you mentioned, letting these kids learn about the history of sport back then.
Right.
It was something special. And most of my memories of you, Willie, as a grade schooler watching you in high school occurred either at Tatlock Field, Summit High School Gymnasium,
right,
or Memorial Field,
right,
where you start in 3 sports.
Right.
And I remember just maybe 2 years ago, Willie, you know, in my mind, you were the greatest athlete ever to come out of the state of New Jersey. And I can say that probably, and everybody in this room will agree, and probably most people in the state of New Jersey will say that. But I remember something very vividly that happened maybe 2 years ago. You were down at Tatlock Field, and you were standing outside of the gates at Tatlock Field, watching a game going on. And I scratched my head and I said, what in God's name is Willie Wilson doing outside of those gates, watching a football game? And I said to myself, Willie, if you're ever back in Summit, make sure you walk through those gates because there's nobody better.
Well, you know, I was there. Thank you. I like watching. I like trying to keep up. I'm not a boastful guy to try to go out and make sure that everybody knows what I'm doing. I just feel like if you're doing good enough, God will put you with the right people. And so what I'm doing it's from my heart. And so when I go down there to watch the games, I'm going down there because I'm really interested. I want to see what was going on. And I hope that we get more kids coming out for football. We had 80-something people on our football team. You know, that's intimidating when you go to another school and they got 80-something players. That means you got to go 3 deep before you even get a chance. Somebody's got to get hurt 3 times. So, but I just saw that there was only 30-something kids out there. And I was really disappointed, but I was hoping that, you know, they'd win anyway. So it would be nice to see a lot more kids go out and to see a lot more kids be prideful in Summit football.
Well, Coach Liberato's turning things around. You had more than 30 this past season, and things are definitely looking up for the program. Willie, do you have some final thoughts, because we're running a little late, and I want everybody to have a chance, if they want an autograph, to come up afterwards. But Frank, go ahead.
I have to ask this because, you know, watching the Yankee games in the late 70s, Phil Rizzuto would always say, you know, Willie Wilson from Summit, I live in Hillside, you know, and Rizzuto would always talk about Willie being from Summit, and then he would always say, that Willie's fast, but he's not the fastest kid in his neighborhood.
Yeah.
So, I mean, was that a rumor?
No, that's not a rumor. Where is Art? We used to have a guy, I was the 5th man on the playground relay team. Now, that's maybe playground down here. I was the 5th guy. And it was really scary that I was the 5th guy. I couldn't beat the other 4. And, you know, people don't realize that that's how good athletes that were around in those days. And Art Stewart, y'all know who I'm talking about. Little left-handed guy, he could just fly. Anyway, but it was different back then. And I would tell people that, and they couldn't believe it. But I was the alternate on the relay team in Playground Olympics, so how about that? But that's way back when. But yeah, it was different back then because just playing in the playground was fun. I just think we didn't have a whole bunch. We didn't have computers, we didn't have this and that. We just went outside to play. And we went out and the sun came up, we went outside. When the sun went down, we came in. And even though the kids have a lot of things better today, those games they're playing in computer should be outside playing those games. It makes it a little bit better. So I guess we're going to end the show, but I just want to say to Brian, thank you, Brian, for having me out. I want to thank everybody for coming. And I kind of figured out this is kind of like, this is your life, Willie. So all the coaches, Doc Geddes, everybody here, it was fun. Mr. Greed, I love you. I mean, you're the man. I just wish that everybody have a good, safe ride home and enjoy yourself, and let's root for Summit.
Hey, you want an autograph? Just kind of walk up the...